Hey kiddos, it's Dad, and here is today's Dadvice. There's a phrase I want you to remember: inputs and outputs. Inputs and outputs. I want you to say that to yourself multiple times in your head. Inputs and outputs, inputs and outputs. And I want you to kind of bake it into the DNA of your soul, wire it into your brain, write it down, tattoo it on you, and just memorize that. That has become one of the most useful phrases, perhaps in my entire life. Here's why. Whenever I come to a place in life where I am particularly feeling depressed or down or like I'm going crazy or really angry. And if I feel like that, and then it sticks with me for several days, even several weeks, then I've tried to implement this inputs and outputs hard work in my mind. And here's what that looks like. While I'm in that state, and I typically will have some kind of aha moment about the fact that I've been feeling a particular way for so many days, weeks, or even months, and I don't really know why. What I've been able to figure out so far is that if I can take a journal or sit in front of a Word document or whatever and just vomit out of my brain how I feel, and all the details that go with that. The who's and the what's and the why's and the where's. If I put my mind to that and just write until I don't have anything left to say, that tends to be very therapeutic, and it allows your brain to empty out all of the emotions that you're feeling and maybe that are hard to put into words. And it gives you time to sort of craft that and express it. You're not trying to write anything special. Nobody should be reading this stuff. It's just for you. And that thing that you have written down is your outputs. That's a reflection of where you are right now. And for me, it's a snapshot, a picture, if you will, of where I'm at in life, how I'm feeling. But outputs are always created by inputs. So what I do then is I flip that over on the back and I begin just writing down several columns of information. I try to write down my TV watching. What have I been watching? How often have I been watching? For me, I like podcasts and audiobooks. What have I been listening to, and how often have I been listening to it? I write down my food. What have I been eating? I write down my drinking. How much alcohol have I been consuming? How much water have I been taking in? I write down interactions like friendships. Who have I been hanging out with, and how often have I been hanging out with them? So you see, there's a pattern there for the inputs, and I try to deal with myself honestly. Again, this is something that nobody's going to see. You guys will never find it. And if you're writing it for yourselves, nobody should ever see it. It's just for you personally. But as you make those columns with all those things, you want to be completely honest with yourself. You don't want to hold anything back. And that's why you don't want anybody to see it, so you can be honest with yourself. And just write those things down. What have you been eating or drinking? What have you been watching? Who have you been hanging out with? And any other inputs that come to mind. And so at the bottom of those columns, you can begin doing something as simple as tabulating, various things like I've had, an average of 10 beers this week, or per week, for X number of weeks. Or I've been, I've binged, X number of hours of this show and X number of hours of that show. And you're just tallying it up. And here's what that will show you. And again, you'll have other columns as well, but here's what that'll show you. In the end, all of those things along the bottom, what you've watched, what you've listened to, who you've hung out with, what you've eaten, what you drink, all of those things equal up to the output on the page before. And life can be sometimes, can feel so complicated and so complex. And we can try to, in the midst of our irritation and depression and sadness and anger, we can try to come up with reasons why we're that way, why we feel that way. And oftentimes we end up blaming it on other people, right? So this person, that I met, they've been giving me a hard time at work. They've been being an asshole at work. And so, that's why I am the way I am. Or so-and-so's not talking to me anymore, and that's the way I am. We can find lots of reasons, and we end up blaming other things. And yeah, like I said in the first Dadvice, if it's to be, it's up to me. You're responsible for how you respond to those things, right? But in the end, on the back of that paper, when you add up all of the things that you've done, all of those things are the inputs, and those are the little tiny decisions that you've made personally that have led up to the output of how you're feeling. I've done that before. For me, I'll even have a column on exercise because how I move, how often I move is important. And for me, I can typically track it down. That's just for me. How much TV I've watched, how many beers I've had during the week, how often I exercised, what type of food I ate. And those little things that we do without thinking, you add all those up, and almost always for me, it has explained with a duh moment, right? That I feel the way I do, why I feel the way I do. It has explained the outputs, my depression, my irritation, my anger, or my sadness, or whatever. So that's the Dadvice: inputs, outputs. Tattoo it somewhere, memorize that, and it will be a tool that you will use very often in life. And I wish that someone had given me the tool when I was your age. And I didn't really discover this tool until just a few years ago. I haven't really made a lot of use of it until the last year and a half, since I've been away from you guys, being deployed and mobilized and whatnot. So take that to heart. Make it a tool that you put in your life toolbox, and write it down, and maybe even have an inputs and outputs journal. Maybe that might be something to do. Maybe once a week, maybe on Sundays or something. You write an output page of how you feel in that week, and then on the back you write your inputs. And of course, the goal is this: if you don't like the outputs, then change the input, right? If you don't like what's coming out, how you're feeling, then you change what you're doing to make you feel that way. You're able to track what you've done, your behavior, your activity, your eating, your drinking, your exercising, your reading, your TV watching, whatever. And with any of those things, you can go and begin to tweak one column at a time, and then begin to track and see what kind of outputs does it lead to at the end of the week. And then you can turn around and tweak again. And this becomes, an ever evolving exercise to help you experience a better quality of life. So I hope that's helpful, guys. And if you've got any questions, you can reach out. And otherwise, I love you guys much.